Hi boys and girls, welcome back to Mr. Brakefield Reads. It is Sunday, which means it is our chapter book day. And of course, as you'll all know, we need a brand new chapter book because last time we finished The Hodge Heg. So today, I am going to reveal to you our new chapter book, which is The Monster of Shiversands Cove by Emma Fischel. It's illustrated by Peter Cottrell, and it's a fair bit different to the last two that we have read. And so I'm going to get straight into it on chapter 1, where we're going to meet the main character. Chapter 1, Shiversands Cove. This holiday is doomed, I said, because Rory should be on this holiday, but Rory is not. I glared at the back of Dad's head. Then I glared out of the car window. I glared at the road winding along far above the sea. Rory is my very best friend. I was 3 when I met him. He moved into our street and I spotted him straight away, as soon as he clambered out of his car seat, clutching a big green lollipop. Rory spotted me too. He came skipping over, beaming, offered me a lick of the lollipop, and that was it. I was Rory's best friend from then on, and he was mine. The mums and dads became best friends too. So for the last 4 years, we have all had holidays together. But not this year. I was expecting this holiday to be brilliant, just like the last 4, I grumbled at the back of Dad's head. But it will not be, because Rory's mum and dad have ruined everything. First, they both got new jobs, 200 miles away from their old jobs. So 1 month and 3 days ago, Rory had to move. Second, moving costs a lot, so Rory's mum and dad decided there would be no holiday this year, and they cancelled it. "Cheer up, Stan," said Dad. "We'll still have a good time." "I doubt it," I said gloomily. "Not with no Rory, just Magnus." I turned and glared at Magnus. Magnus, my brother, is 4 years old, and he's short and stout, with bobbing golden curls. He was lolling in his car seat next to me, fast asleep, dribbling, twitching and muttering. His big fairy spotting guide was lying open on his lap. "The whole first hour of this journey," I said to the back of Dad's head, "I had to listen to Magnus telling me about his magic eyes." Yes, magic eyes. Magic eyes, so Magnus told me, are something all little kids have. Special eyes, eyes that can see fairies and elves and little pixies and all sorts. Magnus also told me that a little kid who does see a fairy or whatever will keep hold of those magic eyes and be able to see fairies forever and ever, even as a grown-up. As if. The second hour, I said, I had to listen to Magnus telling me all his fairy hunting plans for this holiday. On and on and on Magnus went, and I could not shut him up. Even when I stuck my headphones on, he kept pulling them off to chat more. The third hour, I said, Magnus showed me pictures in his fairy spotting guide, and he spent 15 whole minutes explaining not that I wanted to know how seaside fairies have special waterproof wings so that they can splash and play in the waves without their wings getting waterlogged. And now Magnus is finally asleep, but, judging by all the dribbling and muttering, he's dreaming about fairies. I slumped down in my seat, glum as anything. "Almost there," Dad said cheerily. Then the car slowed down and turned left, down a very narrow lane, winding towards the sea. The sea got closer and closer, and then, right below us, I could see it. Shiversands Cove. It was small and sandy, with big black rocks at both ends and jagged cliffs stretching up and away above them. There were cottages, 2 of them, clinging to the slope behind the beach. A pale blue cottage at the far end, and right ahead of us a white one. Shiversands Cottage, our holiday home. Shiversands Cottage was old and crooked. It was leaning a bit to one side and all painted white with a black wooden frame. It had lots of little windows with diamond-shaped panes. I got out of the car and stood with Dad. He stretched and looked around, then gave a big, happy sniff. "See ya," he said. "A beach. Cliffs." Then He pointed out to sea to a small island linked by a rickety bridge from the edge of our cove. And look, he said, there, an island to explore. Perfect. Dad was right. It was perfect. But that made me feel even more glum, because it was perfect except for one thing. No Rory. So I glared at the pale blue cottage at the far end of the cove, the one Rory should be staying in, but wasn't. We had plans for this holiday, I said, big plans, which we did. Digging plans, snorkelling plans, all sorts of plans. And if Rory were here, then Amy would be too, I said. So Magnus could do all his fairy chat with Amy instead of me. Amy is Rory's sister, another 4-year-old fairy fanatic. I felt my shoulders droop. And Rory said we could train Bagel to do the high jump this holiday, I said. But now, instead of Rory and his dog, I'm stuck with Magnus and his hamster. And the hamster is an idiot, and it bites, so... I blinked. There was something out there, far out at sea, swimming behind the island. I tugged on Dad's sleeve. Dad, I said, what's that? Dad looked. What's what? He said. It's gone now, behind the island, I said. But there was something there, something big, something greeny-grey. Just then I heard a gasp from the car seat and a small piping voice. Daddy Stan, it said, I'm absolutely ready to go fairy hunting. Magnus was awake, beaming out of the car window and struggling with the straps of his car seat. Stan, help me, he said. Get me out. I opened the car door and undid the straps. Magnus scrambled out, eyes all shiny as he stared at the sea. He clasped his hands together. Oh, I do hope I find a fairy. And if I do find a fairy, I must let Fairy Fenella know. I groaned. I just couldn't help it. Not Fairy Fenella. Again, I heard a lot about Fairy Fenella in the car. Too much, in fact. Magnus, I snapped. Fairy Fenella is not a real fairy. Magnus just tittered and patted my hand. Stan, he said, you are such a silly. Fairy Fenella is a real fairy. She is not, I said. She's... Stan, said Dad. Dad can get a lot of meaning into a Stan, and this Stan was a warning. Say any more about Fairy Fenella being some grown-up idiot who thinks it's funny to prance around on TV, filling little kids' heads with nonsense about day-to-day life as a fairy, and magic eyes, and all that stuff, and you are in big trouble. Even though it was the truth. Inside Shiversands Cottage was all higgledy-piggledy, full of sloping floors and small dark rooms filled with big dark shadows. It was very old, very dark, and a bit spooky, which I liked. The sitting room was darkest and spookiest of all. I pushed open the door and walked in. It had 2 narrow windows, a sloping floor, and 2 saggy old sofas. There were shelves crammed full of old books and pictures everywhere. Old black and white photos of stormy seas, of huge waves crashing over big black rocks, and of olden days people in olden days clothes standing by olden days boats. Over the fireplace was a big dark painting. It was some kind of sea monster rearing up over a boat at night. An ugly sort of sea monster looming out of the waves and the gloom. Its head was arched back, its eyes were popping, and its snout was open, as though it was roaring. Excellent! Up the narrow creaking stairs there were 3 rooms, a bathroom and 2 bedrooms. The one straight ahead had a nameplate on the door, which said, Captain's Cabin. Then there were 3 small steps up to another room with a sign which said, Crew's Cabin. Crew's cabin was small, but cosy. It had 2 beds, one for me and one for Magnus, with a big porthole-shaped window between them. I stared out of it, and down the long, sloping back garden. It had a fence at the bottom with a gate onto the rocks above the cove and the sand and the sea. The sea was flat and calm in the cove. Not a breath of wind was rustling the water. Further out at sea, the sun was dropping behind the island, a red setting sun. I blinked. Huge ripples were coming in from the sea, rippling into the cove, and widening in circles across it, as if there were a big fish somewhere out there, a very big fish indeed. Okay, we're going to leave it there for now, and next time we'll find out more about Stan's holiday, and perhaps a little bit more about the mystery of this large creature in the sea. There's definitely something out there, but what it is, we don't know yet. But we'll find out perhaps in chapter 2. But for now, stay safe and happy reading. Goodbye, boys and girls.